Daniela.
Dear Nellie, thanks very much for this warm welcome. I hope you can all hear me. I see you nodding. That is wonderful. It's great to see you all here, and it's a great pleasure for this opening of the African Spin, the regional network. And I don't want to take too much of your time because the interesting part is following, but I just want to say a few words about the introduction on why we do this. And you hopefully all know IUFRO as the International Union of Forest Research Organization, and we are acting globally, and we are doing a lot of networking between scientists. And have a lot of activities there. But IUFRO is as well acknowledged at the international level for their support of political decision makers and supporting activities, interactive activities between political decision makers and scientists. But what we recognize is that many of the political decisions are nowadays taken as well at the regional level. And this is why we say we want to make use of IUFRO and the network of IUFRO and the great knowledge we share with all the colleagues worldwide to the regional science policy interfaces and interactions. And this is the real start of it. So we said that we have been acknowledged and well perceived internationally, but we want to bring the IUFRO knowledge and the IUFRO network as well to the regions. And we do so for the moment in two different pilots. So we do one pilot here on the African continent and one on the European continent. And we are very proud, and I'm very happy because what I have perceived so far is a lot of engagement, a lot of motivation of people who want to join in and want to really, become part of the story, being interactive together with science and policy making and making use of the knowledge which is there. And of course, I'm very happy for all the people and old friends I know from former times already who have been already there for a long time in IUFRO, and for all the new friends we can make with this in our forum. And I'm very much looking forward to the next hours to learn a little more as well from our participants coming from the African continent and talking about the different issues and how we can involve better with each other and bring the knowledge to the practice level. And for the more detailed, the technical issues, I'd like to hand over to Mirjana Volarev, who is part of the IUFRO staff in the headquarters and who will tell you a little more about the technical issues. Please, Mirjana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniela. And building on this global perspective, I'd like to also bring the focus, as Daniela mentioned, to the regional level, especially to Africa, and the technical level as well. As you know, the IUFRO Science Policy Program has launched the Regional Science Policy Information Networks, or shortly SPIN, in recognition that many forest-related decisions and challenges are increasingly shaped by regional contexts. And through IUFRO and through SPIN, we support structures, strategic dialogue between science and policy, which is also tailored to the realities and priorities of specific regions. As Daniela mentioned, we currently have pan-European region, but also the African region. So SPIN Africa is designed to strengthen the collaboration among researchers, institutions, policymakers to improve visibility of African forest science, align policy relevant knowledge, and also promote evidence-based solutions. And this work is especially timely as we look towards the 2029 World Congress that is going to be held in Nairobi. So today's webinar is focused on landscape restoration, which marks an important first step. And with that, I'm pleased to hand over to our moderator and once more provide a warm welcome from my side as well. So Nellie, over to you.
Thank you, Mirjana, and thank you, Daniela, for those warm welcome remarks. And I just want to welcome everyone again. And so today's webinar will have a keynote address, which will be done by Professor Labode Popoola from the African Forest Forum. He'll be providing an overview of the state and future of landscape restoration in Africa. And Professor Labode, if I could just introduce him, is a distinguished scholar with a doctorate in forest economics from the University of Ibadan and with over 20 years of senior management experience in African academic institutions, including being a vice chancellor. He has led international research projects worth over $4 million US, and these include a MacArthur Foundation grant for the Masters in Development Practice, and also another one, a Japanese trust fund grant for sustainable development. His work in forestry, agroforestry, and education has earned him multiple national and international awards. So I'd like to welcome Professor Labode to give his keynote address. Welcome.
Very good morning, colleagues, and it's a pleasure being with you this morning. Thank you also for the formal introduction. I've been asked to speak on restoration efforts in Africa, which I will try to do in a few slides, and hopefully it will elicit yeah, I'm trying to share. Can you see my slides? Can you see my slides, please? Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Okay. So I will go on the slides, and the theme is for me to talk about an overview of the state and future of landscape restoration in Africa. And like I said, I will do so in a few slides. The outline is we'll look at issues of forest depletion and degradation. The good news is that the latest report from the FAO tells us that deforestation is slowing down globally and even in Africa, and that's good news, but we are not yet there. We still have a very long way to go. We'll look at forest landscape restoration rationale. We'll look at initiatives and actions that have taken place over the years. We'll also look at approaches and key success factors, the gaps in design and implementation. We'll look at opportunities, and in the same way, we'll also look at some threats that we have discovered over the years. And there will be a conclusion and a way forward. The global forest degradation, as we all know, is affecting many people. The latest statistics show that about 8.8 million hectares were degraded in 2024. And this is happening even more rapidly in Africa, where the annual loss is some 4 million hectares on an annual basis. And estimates suggest that this is likely to worsen, particularly with increasing population and the demand for food, fuel, and fiber. But then we have to produce food, we have to produce fiber, we have to produce fuel for human use. So how do we then balance these needs with ecological needs? And so we'll look at what has happened so far and what we can also continue to do to ensure that things get better. What are the causes of degradation? We all know agricultural expansion, small scale. We're now having large scale investors in agriculture. Interestingly, just about an hour ago, I gave another address at an event organized by UN-RED, a community of practice. The same topic is what we're discussing. Overgrazing is a big issue. Firewood and construction materials all linked to population increases and rapid industrialization that is happening. So the remaining forests that we have are largely fragmented, and they are likely to be further degraded in spite of what FAO makes us to believe, that deforestation is slowing down. Now, forest restoration happens to be one of the promising options, and in the last couple of years, everybody has been talking about it, particularly with the Kunming-Montreal Protocol. Everybody seems to be talking about it, and it's catching up very quickly. And so we see it as a promising option, and there are quite a number of initiatives in Africa that is addressing this. But we also still know that degradation and deforestation is increasing in spite of what FAO says. But yes, we have to take the data as has been stated in the FAO report. Now, the latest report, I have the statistics on this slide. I don't know if you're seeing the slide on deforestation by region. The latest statistics, what we have for tropical Latin America, and we also have tropical Africa, we have tropical Asia, and we have tropical Oceania. Those are the statistics. So what are the rationales for forest and landscape restoration? The first one is that restore our lost forest and associated ecosystem services. There is need for that. There is also the Paris Agreement on climate change, which makes it mandatory that forest landscapes be restored in order to mitigate the negative impact of climate change. There is the issue of biodiversity loss post 2020, GBF. We also have the issue of land degradation, where people are now talking about land degradation neutrality targets. Many countries are catching up on that and trying to ensure that land degradation is reduced. Then, of course, the socioeconomic impact arising from the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, just 5 years away from the end of its targets. So large areas theoretically available for restoration. We all know that. You go across Africa, you have areas that have been deforested, you have areas that have been overgrazed. So we have large expanses of land that can still be restored. And when we're able to do this, there will be many benefits, benefits provided by nature that can also enhance the green supply chain, can enhance livelihoods, can mitigate climate impact. So at the global, regional, and national levels, we are having several initiatives. Like I said, the Bond Challenge, the global commitment to restore 150 million hectares by 2020, and about 350 million hectares. And we also have the Global Partnership for Forest and Landscape Restoration. We have the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, 2021 to 2030. We have the AFR 100, which is Africa's own version. And we have countries that have committed to restore about 100 million hectares. I will show us a map. I will show us a map of how many countries have signed on to this. We also have the Great Green Wall initiatives, particularly in the Sahel area, and Southern Africa. A number of countries are also showing interest in another version of the Great Green Wall. We have the Convention on Biodiversity to restore 15% of degraded ecosystem. And we have the REDD+, which attempts to restore, halt, and reverse forest degradation. So the point being made here is that initiatives are definitely not lacking. The question is, are we able to meet the targets that have been set? What are the political dimensions of this? And I'm happy that the president of IUFRO emphasized the need for science and policy and also politics interface. Those are the real issues. The initiatives are there. There have been enough evidence to show that countries are interested, regional blocs are interested, globally, we have interest in restoration initiatives. But how do we get to the end of the goal? So if we looked at Africa, the map I have displayed, about 31 countries have committed to what they will do. You have Benin, probably the smallest, committing to about 0.5 million hectares. We have Nigeria committing to about 4 million hectares. We have Sudan committing to about 14.6 million hectares. So about 31 of them. And this is very, very significant. Even if they're able to achieve 50% of that in the next 10, 15 years. And if that is done, the landscape approach of restoring our ecosystem will improve livelihood options, it will create opportunities, and these are very, very significant to also help us in achieving the sustainable development goals. We also have the Great Green Wall initiative, also for ecosystem restoration. This initiative is about scaling up land restoration and at the same time, building the capacity of people living within and around these areas to be able to improve their livelihood, to be able to ensure that all the activities that they used to engage in before degradation can come back and also be restored, to ensure that conflicts are reduced between different economic groups, particularly herders and farmers, and to also build their capacity to be able to sustain natural resources, the land, the soil, and all the activities that can ensure sustainable development in their locality. So what are the restoration gaps? There are quite a number of them. Oftentimes, there is regard for communities. Oftentimes, communities are not consulted. There's limited broad-based participation by communities. And the reality is that for any project, if those who will benefit in the final analysis are not carried along, it's a huge gap. The project may not succeed. We also have knowledge gap, particularly when it comes to matching species with site, issues of governance, including ownership, tenure issues, trade-off. We have we have the purpose of restoration in some cases is not adequately aligned with the competitive value within the localities. There's also the issue of limited financing. It's always a problem. Funders commit to some of these projects. You do not see the finances coming. Where they come, at times they are misappropriated or mismanaged. Corruption is also an issue, particularly in some countries in Africa. The good news, for example, is that the Green Climate Fund has committed to scaling up the Great Green Wall initiative, and that project is about starting very soon. So the opportunities, the growing application of digital tools, remote sensing, artificial intelligence, or participatory landscape assessment and implementation, it makes it easy for us to be able to plan. It makes it easy for us to be able to monitor, and it makes it easy for us to be able to manipulate when we apply some of the emerging technologies. There's a growing political will. There's no doubt about it. I mentioned this earlier on. Many countries are committing. For example, in Kenya, they are talking about, is it 15 billion? Planting 15 billion trees in the next couple of years. We have Ethiopia, we have Senegal, we have Malawi. Countries are signing up to this. Then we also see that youths are getting engaged in restoration activities and green job initiative. We have instituted a youth council at the African Forest Forum on issues of forestry. So youth are getting engaged, they're getting interested, and the population is very high. So the opportunities are there. Nature-based solutions are becoming a big issue, even in marketing, even in product sales, even in industries. So people are talking about nature-based solutions for climate resilience. We have carbon markets coming up rapidly. The private sector is getting interested in this. And the African Forest Forum, where I work, has the convening power, the capacity to act with over 4,000 individuals and corporate organizations as members across 52 countries in Africa. We have the capacity to support whatever initiatives that are coming up in the area of restoration in Africa. Key success factors and approaches to landscape restoration, local ownership, and stakeholder engagement. You cannot succeed if the local communities are not supportive of what is being done. Political commitments at the macro level, we need high-level support. We need governments to commit to this. Reliable access to finance. Access to finance is very critical to whatever we want to do. The integrative nature of forest landscape, which involves everybody and every activity within a particular community, is also a success factor that we should latch on. Knowledge sharing and lesson learning platforms, this will accelerate scaling up. Diversity of germplasm availability, again, this speaks to science. What can science do to ensure that we have diversity of germplasm that is required to be able to accomplish landscape restoration, and also capacities, part of which I believe IUFRO is doing and continue to do. So the possible threats. I read in the social media, some platforms a couple of weeks back, seedlings die back in some of these initiative areas, particularly in the Sahel. We are having cases of seedling dieback. What could be the reason? We need to find out what the reasons are, and we need to address them, okay? We also have issues of fire incidents, not very, very common in our own part of the world, but we cannot rule this out. Pests and diseases will always be there. Insecurity and sabotage, whether we like it or not, we have different types of human beings in different communities. There are some who are not happy with some of these initiatives. And so how do we guard against this? Funding gaps. Once funding gaps exist, it affects sustainability. So these are threats that we have to find ways to address. So my recommendation, I'm going to share this slide with you. First, we need to diversify approaches and resources. We need to harness digital revolution. We also need to ensure that rural livelihoods are created. And whether we like it or not, gender, youth, inclusive participation in all we do in restoration activities will ensure that we are able to achieve the desired goals. Capacity needs are there. We have to address them. Universities, research institutes, organizations like IUFRO, African Forest Forum, we all have to ensure that we build the multi-sectoral capacities that are required in the restoration of landscapes in Africa. This picture just shows an example of restoration activity in Ethiopia. I'm happy Volarev is there. He is part of that, and it's a success story that we want to talk about always, and to also find ways to replicate in other parts of Africa. Yeah, these are some of the activities taking place in different locations in Africa for AFR 100 and the Great Green Wall Initiative. So, some statistics about what has happened in some African countries, East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, North Africa, Southern Africa. It's in this slide. Like I said, I'll share it. You gave me just 10 minutes and I will try as much as possible not to exceed it. So my concluding remarks, the restoration of forest landscapes, as well as other natural ecosystems, go beyond returning them to their natural states. It offers immense potentials, particularly to increase human prosperity and ecological function in tandem. And for us to be able to achieve a global forest restoration goal, we will require robust monitoring, we will require good reporting, and we also will require good verification systems that are also capable of detecting the natural recovery of secondary forests and safeguarding their maintenance. We'll also want to add, this is something the African Forest Forum is pushing very hard on the African continent. African businesses and philanthropy will need to commit to the process. we don't have to wait for the Northern Hemisphere to continue to fund our project. There are multi-billionaires in Africa, there are prosperous businesses in Africa that should also be able to sign in to support our restoration activities. Then I will also want to add, this is something we have not been doing. Insurance against identified threats is very key. I was in Turkey for most of last week, and we're discussing the menace of fire. Africa is not ready for this. We have to start working on insurance against identified threats, particularly sabotage, insecurity, and fire outbreak in some of these restored landscape. So I want to thank you for giving me this privilege to speak this morning, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Labode, for really setting the stage on what is in the African setup in terms of land degradation, landscape restoration, what are the challenges, what are the initiatives, and you've really aptly, ended up with the recommendations. And I know the next speakers will be talking a bit much more in detail in some of these areas that you've really brought out. Where we are now moving on to the panel discussions, which will be split into two parts. The first one will be focusing on science insights, and then the second part will be on policy and governance perspective. So in the science sector, we'll have three panelists, and I'll introduce them. And once we do that, then we'll go into the policy part where we'll introduce the next three. But in the meantime, we just ask all the participants to be able to put in their comments and their questions on the Q&A session. I think there's a post that's been put on the webinar chat. So to begin the science segment, I would like to invite Dr. Adejoke and Akinyele as someone deeply involved in education, and she'll be sharing her work in shaping the next generation's understanding and engagement with science. And it's just aptly that Professor Labode has talked about engagement of the youth, because they're the future, because all these things that we're doing definitely has to start now. Let me briefly just talk about Dr. Adejoke. She's a reader at the University of Ibadan, specializing in silviculture and tree improvement. She has held key academic roles and is active in IUFRO and collaborates on online pedagogy with PASGR and PEDAL. She's a fellow and visiting scholar in several countries, which include the US, UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and France. She's widely published, supervised over 60 students, and is a member of multiple professional bodies. Welcome, Dr. Adejoke.
Sorry, Adejoke, I think we are having problems with your audio. Sorry to interrupt.
Still not audible yet?
Now it works. No.
Not yet.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great.
Welcome.
Very much. So I want to thank you for the privilege given me to be able to speak concerning this topic. And what I've been asked to address is about the main barriers and opportunities that we have in implementing restoration in Africa. Professor Labode has said quite a lot about the issues that we have on ground now. And I'm glad that FAO has reported it, that restoration is in land degradation is reducing globally and also in Africa. But however, we have some barriers to restoration. As much as people are interested in doing this restoration, there are barriers to it. And one main one that Professor Labode also mentioned is the funding constraints. Where there is limited financial resources, and then there are competing priorities, then this will hinder whatever restoration efforts that you want to do. Then the issue of land degradation is also a main thing, where we have soil erosion in several places. We have salinization. We have, please, can you hear? Because somebody said they cannot hear.
I think you are clear now.
We can hear you.
Because I just read somebody saying they cannot. Okay, I'm talking about land degradation, and I'm saying that in areas where we have soil erosion, we have salinization and nutrient depletion. All this affects land productivity, and of course, it will affect our restoration efforts. Then the issue of climate variability, climate change is a main thing, a major barrier to landscape restoration efforts, because in some areas we have rising temperature, we have changing rainfall patterns, and increased extreme weather events in different places, and all this creates barriers to landscape restoration efforts. Another key issue is policy enforcement. We do have policies, but then do we make sure that there is enforcement of these policies? So when we have inadequate implementation and enforcement of policies, and then laws that are related to land use conservation, all these serve as major barriers when it comes to restoring our landscape restoration. Another major issue is also the issue of land tenure. If I'm sure that I don't have my land, I don't want to plant trees on it because of the long gestation period of trees. So land tenure is a major barrier. Someone that does not have ownership of the land may not want to actually go into landscape restoration. Then there is also the issue of population pressure. There is increase in population globally. There is increase in the needs that are needed. And so, of course, it affects the available land for restoration. Then we also have capacity shortfalls. Capacity shortfalls in terms of skilled personnel, technical expertise, and institutional capacity. All these are necessary for us to be able to ensure that we have successful restoration efforts. However, all things are not all bad, because there are opportunities when we carry out restoration. So opportunities for restoration in Africa talks about global commitment, which Professor Labode has clearly explained to us. Several global organizations and even organizations on the continent are committed to global to restoration efforts. So opportunity, because there's global commitment, it's an opportunity to be able to enhance restoration. Then innovation and technology. When we have innovation and technology, is a good opportunity for us, because now we can be looking at the use of AI, the use of GIS when it comes to restoration efforts. So these are each areas that we can begin to look into when we're talking about opportunities that are available in restoration. Now, community partnership. Professor Labode also mentioned that where the community do not have ownership of what is being done, it's difficult for it to succeed. But when you have community partnering in whatever landscape restoration effort that is taking place, then it becomes a success, because the communities are able to take ownership of the restoration efforts. The restoration efforts also, the issue of serves as mitigation for climate, and then biodiversity conservation, where we have different species of both plants and animals able to grow and able to be conserved through restoration efforts. Economic benefits is one very important aspect, because now we're seeing that in restoration, you can actually plant and make profit from it. Last week, we had the World Congress on Agroforestry that was talking about agroforestry for people, for planet, and for profits. So it's not business as usual. When you restore, then part of the plan must be that there must also be economic benefits on it. that is going to encourage more people to go into restoration. So that is an available opportunity for us in that. Then, because there's also a lot of please, that's the old slide. Please go to the new one. Because there's also a lot of demand for sustainably sustainable products, then it's also opportunity for us to be able to go into restoration efforts. Now, how can science more effectively inform and support regional restoration agenda? Number one, when we're able to have evidence-based decisions through robust scientific data, this will inform restoration priorities. It will inform the strategies that should be used. It will also inform the policies that are developed. So when we have science can contribute to providing evidence-based decision. Then the issue of ecological research through science. Through ecological research, we're able to understand local ecosystems dynamics, the resilience, and the thresholds. So science can design restoration plans, effective restoration plans that could take care of the ecological niche in all areas. Then we can also look at monitoring and evaluation. This is very important. Through science, we can assess restoration outcomes, we can identify the challenges, we can adapt strategies. Through through science, we can also have climate smart restoration efforts, where we'll be able to incorporate climate projections to ensure resilience in the plans that are put together for restoration efforts. The issue of technological innovation is also another way in which science can effectively inform and support restoration agenda by leveraging on tools like remote sensing, using the GIS, using drones, and using AI for mapping, for monitoring, for implementation. All these are means through which science can more effectively contribute and support regional restoration agenda. Then the issue of collaborative innovation is also important, because we will no longer have to work in isolation. We don't need to work in our own silo. We can all work together to collaborate, to develop innovative ways in ensuring that restoration agendas are successful. The next slide, please. And so, there's a last slide that talks about the few examples that we have. Professor Labode has also mentioned it, but the Great Green Wall is an example that I have, and then the restoration projects that are taking place in Congo Basin. All these are some of the things that have been done to ensure at least successful things that have been, restoration efforts that have been done through the Congo Basin. We have large-scale initiatives of biodiversity conservation. We've had watershed protection, and communities have benefited through the science-led monitoring and adaptive management frameworks. For the Great Green Wall that extends from Senegal to Djibouti, we have had informed land restoration through the use of traditional knowledge, the planting of drought-resistant species, soil regeneration, giving us improved livelihood and combating desertification. So through all those things, where science is able to contribute significantly to restoration efforts. Thank you very much, Nellie.
Wonderful. I can hear from the background there are people applauding you, so we'll also applaud. Thank you so much, Professor Adejoke, for really bringing that out and expounding on what the keynote was really bringing out, and we trust that we'll be able to read more, even have to get more feedback, even from the participants who are able to engage with you in terms of some of those initiatives that you've given out on barriers and opportunities and how science can actually inform and support regional restoration agenda. So moving on, I would like now to introduce Dr. Ernest Foli from FORNESSA. FORNESSA is the Forest Research Network of Sub-Saharan Africa. Dr. Foli actually holds a doctorate and an MPhil in forestry from the University of Aberdeen in the UK. With over 35 years in tropical forestry research, He's the Executive Secretary of FORNESSA and coordinates a postgraduate program on climate change and natural resources management from the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. His expertise includes forest mensuration, growth modeling, silviculture, and forest restoration. He has published over 200 scientific works, including articles, books, and reports. So I'd like now to invite Dr. Foli to actually now give his comments on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nellie, and good morning from Ghana to all the participants. If we go to the next slide, I just also want to more or less emphasize some of the key issues that have been discussed first in the keynote address and also by my colleague Adejoke, looking at the main barriers and opportunities in implementing restoration in Africa and the role of science in effectively informing and supporting regional initiatives. If you go to the next one, Prof. Popoola has already mentioned some of the issues related to restoration in Africa. In actual fact, this is largely driven by the need to restore large areas of forest that have been depleted and as a result of human activities. And also for the fact that many of the African countries are now committed to the international restoration agenda. He mentioned Bond Challenge, the Great Reef War, AFR 100, and others. And so, of course, deforestation and forest degradation has resulted from illegal exploitation and trade in forest products, conversion to agriculture, and in Ghana, especially these days, unsustainable mining is becoming a key issue. Although when we're right now proposals for REDD+, it was only agriculture and forest exploitation that were the key issues. So with the dynamics of the times, you see that mining and other human activities are even coming to the fore in making things worse. So the concept of FLR is actually recognized, as Prof said, as a viable option that we can adopt to reverse the trend of forest cover loss. But of course, if you go to the next slide, we recognize that implementation of the concept is daunted by several challenges that Prof has already mentioned and Professor Adejoke has also mentioned. There's first the land insecurity. In Ghana, for instance, registering land isn't easy. Sometimes it takes years, and so that these tankers actually make it difficult for people to even acquire land if they want to embark on some of these initiatives. They've also already talked about inadequate human and technical capacity to effectively implement the concept. In many instances, the road network, the road infrastructure to those areas that are suitable for restoration are rather poor, and therefore it makes it difficult in the first instance even to set out to implement the restoration activities. They've also already mentioned information gaps. Of course, if effective dissemination of information also has arisen as limitation one way or the other, especially information on what species to plant. Prof. Labode mentioned information on pests and diseases, fire control, from the silvicultural point of view, tending requirements, what species to plant at what spacing. There's also poor access to planting material. You need quality germplasm that can withstand some of the threats. And this is often not the case because it is difficult to acquire. And when it comes to private sector investment, high interest rates and inadequate credit facilities come as hindrance to the process. Can we have the next slide, please? Again, my colleagues have already talked about opportunities for successful implementation. The first point is that local communities themselves are the worst affected as a result of degradation and deforestation. And because they depend on the ecosystem for their well-being, the economic, the social aspects, it comes as a great opportunity because their involvement makes it possible. Again, as discussed already, the FLR is relevant to many of the international commitments, such as the conventions on biological diversity, desertification, issues related to food security, disaster risk reduction. All these require high political commitment. And because many of the countries in Africa are already committed to these and are signatories to some of these conventions, it comes as a great opportunity for successful implementation. And of course, we mentioned knowledge sharing. This is a key aspect. And if we can effectively have a platform for knowledge sharing, as Prof. Adejoke also mentioned, then it makes it possible for us to even replicate what is already done and to upscale it. And that's where technology and innovation also come in as key opportunities, because technology is advancing and increasingly we are seeing how technology can be used in terms of drones and other facilities for enhancing opportunities for successful implementation. And so we also look at can we go to the next slide? Yes. In all these things, science plays a great role. My colleagues have already mentioned the problem with matching species to sites. Which species should we plant? Are they suitable for the sites that we are going to plant? There's a science that can address some of these issues. We talk about modeling for improved decision-making, and often this is supported by AI and IoT, Internet of Things. We are looking at modeling, ecological monitoring, making data available, because without science, you cannot provide the data that will make it possible even for adaptive management opportunities. Then it comes to protection. We plant, but then sometimes, as Prof showed in some of the diagrams, there's dieback. The tree health, pest and disease control are quite critical. And these can be addressed through science. Agricultural aspects, what planting methods? Are we looking at seeds? Are we looking at vegetative propagation? What will be the appropriate tending regimes in terms of silviculture? And in Africa, of course, we have a large number of species, even per hectare. And the ecological needs of all these species, you cannot, afford ahead determine. And so it's only through science that we are able to determine what the ecological needs of the different species would be, the appropriate mix in the stands as we plant, so that we do not have mono species all throughout, because we are looking at how to improve the biological diversity of the landscape. Science can also help improve value addition to timber processing. And of course, when we look at the international agenda, we are looking at the economic, social, and cultural aspects as they address the SDGs, for example. And what are the impacts of planted tree species on the ecosystem and its services? All these are the parts of the equation that science can address. And so if we go to the next slide, I would just conclude by saying that the opportunities for FLR in Africa are huge. And of course, the benefits are enormous if we can implement it properly. Of course, Prof mentioned that the drivers of deforestation have yet to be fully addressed. But of course, sustainable landscape restoration and management can serve as a valuable pathway to addressing the societal needs and, of course, the dependence on ecosystem services for human well-being. Science and technology, especially with the recent advances in artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, have a great role to play in implementation. But of course, all those other challenges, such as access to land, credit facilities, and good governance are key if we can ensure effective stakeholder engagement. That way, Africa will surely be able to meet their commitments and to be able to reverse the impacts of forest loss on the environment and people. So I'll stop here and then take questions as they come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Foli, for really bringing out again a number of issues. I think I picked out even some of the other drivers is mining. I think we hardly take a lot of, just accounting on some of these issues that are contributing to landscape degradation. You've also highlighted quite a number of things, also opportunities, and how science can actually inform and support regional restoration agenda. The need for higher political commitment has come out very well, and I think we'll be talking into that into the next session where we get into policy and governance and seeing how we can get examples. So thank you so much, and we can give a good clap for him virtually as participants as I welcome the next presenter. The next presenter is Dr. Jane Njuguna, who is actually our first female CEO director for the Kenya Forest Research Institute. She holds a doctorate in forest mycology and pathology from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and she bridges forestry research and policy, serving as a strategic planner and consultant in forestry, environment and energy, gender and climate change. She's a prolific author and a grant winner, and she leads efforts in forestry, germplasm, conservation, and developed in award-winning the KEFRI app, which is supporting Kenya's 15 billion tree strategy. She mentors young scientists and researchers and is active in IUFRO. She's actually the chair of the current Congress Organizing Committee. And also she's part of the African Forest Forum and other professional bodies. Unfortunately, morning she got called on an official assignment where the president is launching a program in the Mau Forest. So she's aptly given Dr. Joram Kagombe, who is our deputy director in charge of socio-economic policy and governance theme, who will be giving that presentation on her behalf. Karibu Joram.
Thank you, Nellie, and I want to just give a presentation on behalf of my director. We'll be discussing on the role of restoration in Kenya. And because I have very few minutes, I will skip some slides. I think you can go to the next, just an introduction of KEFRI, who we are and our mission. I don't want to spend time there. And also the mandates of KEFRI. They have 4 mandates: conducting research, doing dissemination, building capacity, and establishing partnership. I want to go to the next slide where we are talking about the Kenya's response to continental restoration goals. We have had the 15 billion trees strategy, which I think quite a number of you have heard about it. And this is an ambitious program where we want to plant 10.2 million hectares in degraded landscapes. And this should happen between now, by 2032. We want to bring the tree cover from 12.3 to 30%. Trees at the end of it. We have 11 intervention areas. And this, in each of the intervention areas, we have clearly said who will do what. And now we are working towards that. I want to go to the next slide, the Kenya commitment to issues of environment. We have our Constitution 2010, which is a very good commitment, Vision 2030. We have the National Landscape Restoration Program. There's a 15 billion program. We have the Forest Act. And right now we are doing an amendment of the Act so that we can incorporate emerging issues and capture issues that can help in restoration. We have also regulations which we are putting in place, and we have also signed various treaties with international treaties, which Kenyans are signatory to. Next slide, please. On the next slide is just go to the next slide. I think we have covered this one. We have developed technologies to accelerate restoration, and I'll just share the four of them. One is tissue culture, where we do mass propagation of indigenous species. This is a way of ensuring that we have adequate seedlings to plant. We have also come up with a long-rooted seedlings technology. This is to enhance survival, especially in the dry areas where we need the conditions are tough. We have also brought in the issue of technology, mechanizing hole drilling and breaking the handspan, and also issues of riverbank stabilization using bamboo. Next slide, please. The other one is on enhancing tree seed access in our counties. We have to ensure that we have quality jump pricing for the 15 billion. So we have constructed 11 more resource centers, resource centers, and also 11 of them are complete. We're also doing 7 more. So in total, we shall have 18 seed centers spread across the whole country. And the idea is to ensure that we have adequate seeds to be able to plant in the whole country, and also ensuring that we don't have to transport seeds for long distances. The other technology where we are working on is piloting development. Next slide. Piloting and developing technologies for innovations. This is where we want to enhance forest productivity and tree productivity. We are also doing reseeding of degraded regras because some of the areas we don't have to plant, we do reseeding. Also doing acceleration landscape restoration. We have been able to pilot aerial seedlings and also using drones and seed balls. Also, we are using artificial intelligence and machine learning to ensure that we have proper monitoring of what we are planting. We have a form called Jasamiti, and this Jasamiti is being used to monitor the 15 billion trees. It is an application where every Kenyan, when you plant trees, you can be able to put it using the phone, the smartphone, and it will go into the main count for the whole country. Let me share some success stories on which we have been able to achieve. One is on the issue of community engagement in conservation of one of the forests called Maragori Hills. The importance here, we build enclosures and fencing to protect the degraded forest, and this had a bigger impact because the regeneration occurred. And if you can compare the photos which are there, you can see the forest, how it was in 2010, how it was in 2014, 2016, now last year, 2024. You can see a whole process of forest restoration taking place. And the key thing is fencing and ensuring that we keep up the livestock and the other agents which can degrade the ecosystem. The next one, you can go to the next slide. The next slide is where we are talking of science-aided regeneration for grassy hills. Here, the idea is we ensured that we did wide spacing to introduce framework species. This was to accelerate the fast growth rate. We were to accelerate the survival and also introduce fast-growing species. So if you see the photos there, you can see Guasi, how it was in 2009, in 2011, 2016, and 2019, where we could talk of successful rehabilitation on which occurred for Guasi hills. Let's go to the next slide. We are talking of guided restoration of riparian areas using bamboo. Here we are talking of Maragori hills. And this is where we are using bamboo to plant along the riparian areas and ensuring that we create a riparian buffer zone of about 30 meters on both sides. And we plant bamboo at a spacement of 5 meter by 5 meter. This way we ensure that the riparian areas are restored, and it helps in terms of soil erosion, and even ensuring that, because most of our forests are also water towers, then we don't have a lot of sediments going into the dams and going into the waterways. Let's go to the challenges which we have faced in restoration. One is we have many degraded areas, and these end up becoming grazing zones. So local communities tend to resist forest restoration in such areas because they are already benefiting out of the grazing zones. Then we have inadequate resources for research. Of course, this is the same to all the agencies. The resources will never be enough. But when resources are not enough, we are not able maybe to achieve what we are supposed to achieve. Then restoration science is not in the even the people in primary school, secondary school, about the importance of restoration, the importance of for the environment in their lives, and that way they will take an active role in restoration. Then community involvement is also key, but it requires resources for the medium-term engagement. We need to have training, alternative livelihood for these communities, because as you engage them, they also require their daily living. So they have to ask what is their take in this whole exercise. Let's go to opportunities. We have opportunities in expanding partnership in implementing these activities. We expand the partnership, continental and even regional partnership. Private sector involvement has become very important through business ventures, opportunities, tree planting, agroforestry. And here in Kenya, we are talking of promoting commercial forestry in our landscapes. Financing and investment in restoration, we need to come up with a financing program, which can be good for forestry. When you talk with the bank institution products in forestry, we need to think about how we can come out with bankable products. We also need to create business that improve productivity while restoring our landscape. This becomes very important, that can we be also improve the productivity per unit of an area. Also monitoring and analyzing data for restoration become very important, because once you plant, can you continuously monitor what you have planted. Then use of technologies for monitoring. Like right now, when you are monitoring large areas, the cost of monitoring can be very expensive. So using of drones, using of AI in monitoring become an easier option, such that we don't spend all our money monitoring, but we can be able to use GIS, drones, AI in monitoring to ensure that every year we can report our success towards rehabilitation. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kagombe. Participants, give him his accolades. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing out what KEFRI has done together with our partners, especially in getting quality germplasm, and that was even raised with Professor Labode's keynote. We have to have quality germplasm if we are going to be reseeding and replanting in some of those areas. So even those success stories need to be documented and shared so that people are able to see where the challenges and how people can be able to meet them. So I know we're not doing too well on time, so I'd like us to move to the next session. And I'd like to really thank you, our scientists, for your insights. And now, as we move to the next panel, which will be on policy and governance, and we'll start off with Professor Patricia Kameri-Bote, who is the director of the Law Division at UNEP and is a founding research director at the International Environmental Law Research Center. She has experience of spanning over 20 years leading environmental law programs in Africa. She has consulted for UN and serves on the international law boards. She's a member of the Senior Council Board of Kenya and a former dean at the University of Nairobi, the law department, and she holds advanced law degrees from Stanford, Nairobi, Warwick, plus honorary degree from the University of Oslo. Karibu sana, Professor Patricia, to give us a bit about, in terms of the legal issues, in terms of, and the policy, in terms of landscape restoration in Africa. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar, which I think is very timely. Forests, as we have heard from the other speakers, provide an array of critically important ecosystem services, including habitat for biodiversity of global significance and livelihoods for vulnerable and indigenous communities. Investing in forests not only addresses climate change and biodiversity loss, but it also offers substantial economic returns and job creation opportunities. Protecting the vitality of forests, which are the lungs and heartbeat of our planet, is necessary to preserve their role in the well-being of people and the planet. And in speaking about the policy that is required to do this, we need to bring in the role of law. Law is a powerful transformative tool in protecting forests by establishing rules, regulations, institutions such as KEFRI that we've heard from, and enforcement mechanisms to prevent deforestation, promote conservation, and ensure sustainable use of forest resources. Once the laws are made, we need to ensure that the laws do not just stay on the shelves. We need to focus on strong implementation and enforcement, which guarantees that the tangible benefits reach communities who use forest resources, and that they also benefit the vitality of the forests itself. The need for strong laws and their effective implementation is what has led many academics, policymakers, and international organizations, such as the United Nations Environment Programme, to develop the concept of the environmental rule of law. Environmental rule of law simply means good laws well implemented. And as countries modernize and update their forest laws to face the different challenges that we've heard about in the earlier panel, they need to embrace the environmental rule of law principles of justice, equity, non-discrimination, and inclusion. Forest laws focus on substantive rights to land, trees, forests, and forest products, and also on procedural rights, participation, free, prior, and informed consent, as well as stewardship over ecosystems, so that we restore degraded forests, but we also ensure stewardship over forests. The engagement of key stakeholders in both policy making and in use, conservation, and management in forests will bring many benefits in terms of the health of the forest, as well as socio-economic, ecological, and intragenerational impacts. All over the world, communities and individuals are taking a stand on forest protection and play key roles in conservation and restoration as well. Several court cases led by individuals and communities of the past years have sought accountability, respect for human rights and forest protection, as well as rights of future generations. Environmental human rights defenders, including forest defenders, continue to be important voices for forests, but are increasingly targeted, prosecuted, and murdered. Indigenous peoples are also often at the heart of conservation and restoration efforts due to their knowledge, innovations, and practices. Women are also key actors in environmental and forest governance, even though challenges to their participation and protection of their rights persist around the world. Within this context, let me introduce and pitch for the Model Forest Act, which meets a glaring need considering that there is no dedicated, internationally legally binding instrument on forests. Indeed, efforts to forge an instrument in Rio only yielded forest principles. The initiative to develop a Model Forest Act, which we are calling MOFE, seeks to produce a key knowledge resource to support countries, and African countries can avail themselves of this in putting in place modern forest legal frameworks or modernizing the laws that they have. It is a policy-making collaboration of vital partners on forest protection, from UN entities to multilateral development banks to scientists, policymakers, and judges. And it engages a myriad of consultations with different types of stakeholders across the world. Partnering with the Asian Development Bank, the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, the Global Judicial Institute on the Environment, UNEP is committed as ever to the development of this Model Forest Act as a way that recognizes interdisciplinary approaches. It is also based on scientific evidence and brings in legal innovations from around the world. This process is currently underway, and we have presented MOFE in key fora, such as the World Conservation Congress and COP29 under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. We will be presenting MOFE at COP30, which is of course being called the Forest COP, which is taking place in Belém at the heart of the Amazon in a couple of weeks and is aimed to be launched by the end of the year. The protection of forests is vital for the achievement of sustainable development goals and ensuring a sustainable future for all. We hope that this model forest law will help countries, especially on the African continent, to put in place their own laws that focus holistically on the conservation, use, and restoration of forests based on sound science. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Patricia. Yes, I can see people giving you the virtual accolades. Indeed, you've brought out quite a bit. That is also now some of the key issues that people are experiencing about protecting their forests and how the communities also are seeking to be part of it. Thank you so much also for bringing out the MOFI, the Model Forest Act, and seeing how that will also be further discussed in the upcoming COP30. And how Africa can also plug in and have their own programs. Thank you so much, and we look forward to maybe interactions with the panelists, with the participants. So moving on next, we'll want to call on Dr. Peter Minang, who actually is working for C4 ICRAF with 20 years experience in the areas of ecosystem services, community forestry, conservation, and REDD+, and has published widely as on these issues. He also advises several African countries and institutions on land use and climate change related issues. His current research interests include the nexus between adaptation and mitigation to climate change and the interface between environmental services and development and multifactional landscapes. So he'll be sharing research translating into practice, especially in the context of governance and landscapes management. Karibu sana, Dr. Minano.
Thanks a lot, Nellie. Thanks a lot for the previous presenters, Prof, for spotlighting the legal things. But I also really like the end of Professor Dr. Kangombe's presentation that really highlighted a number of directions in terms of making restoration more profitable. And I think that for me, I wanted to focus for the few minutes that I have on just one key aspect that I think is a necessary and important change paradigm shift that we need in forestry on the continent. I think we need to, from a policy perspective, move into a new forest economy for the continent. I think that it is important for a new forest bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy that is powered by forestry to drive restoration on the continent. And that's for a number of reasons. The first one is that we've seen that whenever restoration projects happen and there is no sustainability, there is no profitability, these projects end up stopping beyond as soon as the project stops. So we need to build in profitability. We need to build in financial sustainability into these projects. And the main way would be to connect these restoration projects to a bioeconomy of its own, one that is based on forest goods and services. So building a portfolio of goods and services that are important and that can bring money into the restoration economy. We need to look at what goods we can generate within that economy. Dr. Joram was talking about building commercial forestry. I think production forestry is one of the areas that has been neglected broadly across the continent in terms of investments in science, investments in time, and even investments from government. We have very few hectares of land that are in production forestry. I think the next reason why it is important to connect restoration to a bioeconomy is that we need to make restoration contribute to GDP in a significant way in terms of creating green jobs, in terms of providing biomaterials to the local economy, connecting to industry. I think there is significant value that some of our forest plants are providing for medicine, for cosmetics, that we are not leveraging on. I'll give you a few examples. If you take shea butter, for example, we produce on the continent in the Sahel almost 80%, 90% of the world's shea butter, but we get back 12% of the global value of shea butter. That doesn't make sense. The same goes with gum arabica, where we are producing almost 90% and we get less than 6% of the global value of shea butter, of gum arabica. I think it's important to think through this and look at how do we make sure that restoration is creating value. If you look at the top 10, FAO released a study of the top 10 tree commodities, and something that we've been working on over the last couple of years, all the products from forestry, and the total economy is about $200 billion a year. 200 billion. Africa leads in about 5 of those tree commodities that is cocoa, cashew nuts, gum arabica, shea butter, and one more. But we don't capture more than 9% of the global value of that market. I think we can do much more with biotechnology, growing and helping to connect that to industry. As Dr. Kangombe was saying, we need to build business cases. We tried that in Kenya when we looked at President Ruto's 15 billion tree program. And we hypothesized that if only 1 billion of those were targeting 8 specific tree commodities that are blended in the whole ecosystem function approach within agroforestry in particular, but with smallholder plantations as well, we would be able to generate, in very conservative terms, $56 billion a year. I mean, over 10 years. And that would be about $5.4 billion a year. And if you take that, put that in context, in Kenya, for example, tourism per year provides $5.2 billion. So forestry and trees will be challenging tourism as an industry with far less investment requirements. So I think there is a very strong case for connecting our restoration efforts, a new forestry approach to a bioeconomy that contributes to GDP, that attracts the private sector, and that solves our finance problems within restoration. And I think that this new paradigm is extremely important with Kenya, for example, driving commercial forestry and other countries. I think this is a huge area of opportunity in policy development that we need to move. And I see ministries of finance investing if we can show them the data that it can contribute to GDP. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Minang. Thank you so much. Yes, the accolades come in. You've brought in very key focus, and I think that connection of restoration with bioeconomy contributing to GDP, that could be some of the, the catalysts that we need, to get this policy dialogue getting along. So thank you so much for your insights and also connection with also the previous presenters and also being in tandem with that. So in closing this policy segment of our SPIN webinar, I'd like to invite Ms. Cecile Jebet from the African Women's Network for Community Management of Forests. And Ms. Cecile is an agronomist and a social forester with a master's in social forestry from Wageningen University with over 33 years of field experience. As a gender specialist and a women's leadership trainer, she founded the African Women's Network for Community Management of Forests, that's REFACOF, to strengthen women's roles in natural resource management across 17 African countries. She serves on Cameroonian's National Red Plus and Climate Change Steering Committee and coordinates the Central African CSO Red Plus platform. Cecile is a prominent advocate for women's land rights, actively involved in the UN Women's Major Group and global networks such as GGCA, WEDO, and WOCAN, and contributes to several international forest and climate governance bodies. Her few remarks today will be on her experience working with communities in this aspect on land restoration and some of the challenges she's been able to experience and the opportunities that are there. Welcome, Cecile.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nellie. Thanks for the invitation. I don't know if I can share my screen or you will help me with my PowerPoint, because I have shared my PowerPoint earlier. But if I have to share it, I can still do it also.
It's actually on screen right now. Can you see it?
Oh, it's coming.
It's It's there.
Thank you. So thank you so much. I will be talking about the community level, especially women, what they are doing in restoration, what are they, how can we improve, where are they in the governance mechanism or process or position. I think that what is also very, very important. So I have two questions. How can the governance system at national and local level be strengthened to enable effective and equitable restoration effort? And how can policies be designed to ensure the long-term sustainability and scaling of restoration initiative? So our outline, next please. Next please. Next slide. Can we get to the next slide, please? Okay, thank you. This is RIFACOF, our network. We are in 20 countries now. I think maybe we can even grow more in a few months and years to come, because we are open now to all African countries. So the African Women Network for Community Management of Forests, we were created in Yaoundé in 2009, and we are 20 countries, West, Central, and Madagascar. It's an advocacy platform for African women tenure rights in land and forest. Our mission is to promote rural women's land and forest rights in Africa and advocate to shape policies and practices for gender equity in tenure issues. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide, please. Wow. Okay, maybe I use my because the time is running. I don't know what is happening with the slides over there. Okay, next slide. Thank you. How to ensure, no, please, you have gone very fast. Please, you have gone very fast. Just a slide after our presentation, I wanted to share some of the initiatives that women are carrying out across Africa. Not this one, please, the earlier one. Oh. Earlier, please. Can you go back a bit, please? The back one, please. Yes, thank you. So this is a few ecosystem restoration initiative that you can see. They are very much engaged in landscape restoration at forest area. You see in the nursery production in mangrove, where they are very busy in them, and they are restoring degraded landscape all over across many countries. We have initiative in Benin, in Cameroon, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Togo, in the DRC, and in Ghana. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh my goodness. The next one, please. Next, yes. These are some numbers I wanted to show. In the forest, only from 2020 to 2024, women have succeeded to restore 1,845 hectares in the forest area. In 2023, 223 hectares in mangroves. And you see the number of tree seedlings that has been produced more than 1 million in the forest area and 700,000 in the mangrove. And the number of women who are involved, and you see in more than almost 1,600 women in the forest areas and 389 in the mangrove, and youth who are very involved as well. You see the figure 758 in the forest activities, and then 213 in mangrove restoration activities. So where are women in the governance system? This is also what we wanted to share based on what we are seeing on the ground. Women are underrepresented in the governance structures in the forestry sectors in Africa. Unfortunately, there is a lack of data and statistics to visualize this. I think one of the area of intervention I may ask IUFRO to focus on is also trying to get data. Where are we exactly? How many are we women at the which level of the governance structure is very important. And very few women are also part of the decision-making bodies. The literature talks about 80% of women in sub-formal user groups, so 80%. This is, and we still have to make sure that maybe we have accurate data and statistics. Next, please. Next, please. These are some initiatives. So how we ensure a long-term sustainability and scaling of restoration. I'm happy that previous speakers have really talked about it, and I'm just coming back to insist that we need gender disaggregated data. Statistics on women in forests in Africa are still lacking, and it's very, very important to work on that, because as you know, the statistics, the data are key for the decision making, key for even for policy formulation. They are key on most of everything. The basic information are from the statistic, and we are lacking statistics in this area very much in Africa. Land and policy reforms as well. On land tenure, all the previous speakers talk about the challenge in securing tenure. If we really want to scale up restoration, if you want to be successful in the restoration, if you want to have a restoration for climate crisis and for livelihood, we need to make sure that tenure is secured. So we carry out reform to make sure women have access to property rights and young people, because those are two groups which are experiencing great challenges in that. And then support and promote the development of community forests. I think Peter had just said, we are talking now about community-led forest economies. And for us, if we want to be successful in addressing the climate crisis, in addressing poverty in our area, in our region, in our continent, we should direct our effort in developing community forest-based enterprises, because this is where we will have to get added values and push for, for all what we are talking about. Restoration cannot succeed with poverty. Restoration go along together with hand in hand, as we usually say, with livelihood development. So for us, there is a global need and collective commitment to invest on community forest enterprises development for livelihood and sustainable management of forests, and above all, to address the climate crisis and the biodiversity loss. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. So the long-term sustainability is also, we need direct funding. Access to funding, it has been, I think everybody is informed that only 1% of the climate fund finance go directly to indigenous people and local communities, 1.7, I think. And this is those people who are making things happen on the ground, and those people don't have, those who are making things happen don't have access to direct funding. So we really need to direct the funding now to those who are most in need to scale up successful restoration initiative. We can't address effectively the climate crisis and livelihood without giving direct access to communities, women, young people, indigenous people to funding. And the institutional support we have in the literature is very, very minor information, little information, but we are moving forward to seeing that women-led organizations are still lagging behind. They lack institutional support. We have developed very successful initiative that we need to scale up, to share, to scale up. We have W+ standard, which if you use it is a little bit like the standard we are the credit, carbon credit we are talking about in other sciences, and we have developed a very traditional way of improving women access to land. And we have now realized that the restoration has an impact that we have never thought before. It's also improving access to land to women and to young people. So these are initiatives that we can also scale up to make sure that we are really moving towards more long-term sustainability and scaling up of restoration initiative. And last, please, the next one. Next slide, please. It has not been easy to manage these slides. Next, please. Thank you. So to conclude what my 5-minute intervention, mainstreaming gender in the governance system as well as in policies will improve effective and equitable restoration efforts. So we have to make sure that our policy are gender responsive or at least gender sensitive. We have to make sure that our governance system is gender sensitive. We have to make sure that women who are making things happen on the ground and youth also have access to governance structure, have access to decision making, and have access to funding to upscale all what they are doing. Ensuring restoration sustainability, also mobilizing, enabling policies, developing gender responsive funding mechanism for climate and for livelihood of those who are also making us better and making our life better every day. Those are women and youth. For IUFRO, I think we will have a key role to play by informing decision-making people and donors through accurate research data. We have one of the challenges. I was not talking about the technical aspect of restoration, but access to quality seed is also key to upscale the restoration, because we have a lot of losses in the ground because of the quality of the seed. So this is what I wanted to share in my 5-minute time. Please make sure if you have questions, I'm very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Cecile. And yeah, I can see you're getting the accolades virtually for really bringing out your success stories and initiatives with RECACOF, and the issues that you've brought about on gender and the need of disaggregated data, on gender especially, and the long-term sustainability, because that's the only way we can be able to really achieve to the end. And the call for institutional support for us to move forward. So I'd like to thank all the panelists for your valuable input. And now we want to open the floor for questions from the audience, and there are some which are typed. I think I will proceed reading through them, and so that I can ask the panelists to actually address them, maybe for the next 10 or so minutes before we really close this session. I know it has been a fast, very quick in terms of really sharing. So there was a question that was put on the chat from Tefera Belay. who says, how can we be able to close funding gap in restoration, especially how could we engage African private sectors? Maybe I can ask any of the panelists to be able to answer this, because it was not directed to anyone in specific.
If I should take the first shot, perhaps, I think it has to do with the availability even of the credit facilities and the high interest rates. And so to make it easy to close the funding gaps, as you're saying, perhaps in Africa, the banking system has to look at the benefits of landscape restoration, both in terms of the economics, the social aspect, environmental aspects, and make it easier for investors to access credit from the banks. And probably that's the only way. Of course, there will be other avenues through the Green Fund and the others. But to facilitate it such that investors in Africa can actually take up landscape restoration more effectively.
Yes, quite indeed, because these are long-term initiatives. So we've got to find, ways of how that can be taken up by funding institutions or even the bioeconomy. Anyone else to chime in? I can see Peter.
No, thanks. That's a really, really important question. I think in addition to what Ernest said, access to credit, I think it is important to understand that we need to put in place specific de-risking mechanisms for restoration and forestry projects. And the reason is that for most of these projects, it does take time, trees take time to grow. And so for that period of time, that initial period, they will need to be investing and investing and investing. And there isn't necessarily any, so we need to be smart about our designs so that if we plant trees, there might be some undergrowth of crops that are in agroforestry systems that are fast revenue, fast quick turnovers. We need to try and bring in carbon funds that are front loaded, to help to bring in that finance. And there is need to maybe justify why we need adaptation funds to finance those early phases. So it would be a combination of things that will make those investments. But I think it's key to de-risk and make sure that we are proofing that early phase to be able to attract finance and design businesses around restoration that are more viable. I think that's important. But also, I think it's important to think about this in very many ways, because I gave the example of cashew nuts, for example. We spent all those years to grow cashew nuts and only to consume the nut, which is only 9% of the biomass. There is 90%, 91% that we are not using. A lot of that can go into doing briquettes. The shells can do briquettes. The apples can do juices that we are not using currently. And if you take that array of multiple uses, diversification of uses in the forestry sector, we will be able to build businesses that make sense and generate sufficient financing for restoration. I'll stop there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't know whether there's anyone else. Yes, Cecile, you want to chime in?
Yeah, thank you. I just added that it's also important when we are talking about private sectors. Usually, it's not only these big agro-business people, but it's also all those who are very, very close to the communities. How can we build that partnership with communities based on the need of the local communities and the need of the private? And then we put them in a partnership where the private sector can help invest, and then they return on investment by, selling the buying the product from those same communities. As Peter was saying, our communities 100% are in agroforestry system, because women they have realized that while they are planting trees, they need also to develop agriculture agriculture, because agriculture will give them, they will help them to improve their food system, but also earn some income from the sale of the surplus of the production. So how can we get a private sector interested? For example, women in Togo are very much engaged in wheat production, in maize production, and in combination with trees. In Cameroon, we have those who are doing fruit trees in combination with manioc and all the rest. How can we get those small, even small scale private enterprises to be interested, build that direct partnership with those communities, with those women, and build the capacities and get the best of what they are looking for from the product that will be produced? That's what I see also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Adejoke.
Yeah, let me just quickly mention also that for the private sectors, another way in which we can engage them is to bring them on board as part of their corporate social responsibility. In the University of Ibadan, we've had banks and other organizations partnering with us to establish plantations of various trees. So if there's a way that we could collaborate with them and make reforestation efforts part of their corporate social responsibility, that's also another way to be able to bring in these private sectors on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for elaborating on those examples, Dr. Cecile and Dr. Adejoke. I think then we've sort of exhausted on that, so that I can go to the next question. This is from Divini Akinyele, who says, what are your takes on the trade-offs that Africa, especially the Sub-Saharan African countries, has seen, are likely to face in participating in restoration, that is FLR, vis-a-vis development and moving from largely developing countries to developed economies? How best can we monetize FLR and have this reflect in our national accounts and bring in revenue streams to our economies? So I think it's almost similar. I think we've sort of spoken to that, unless there's anything else you want to add off, especially on the trade-offs.
I think one has to also look at competition for land as different land uses come up. So restoration is going to be pitched against other land uses. And the question is whether, if, for instance, you want to develop develop infrastructure, or you want to develop houses, these are the kinds of things people are looking at. How long will I have to wait to actually get my return on investment after putting out trees for restoration?
Indeed, that's quite true. And those are the questions, actually, that are real issues, because people are looking for benefiting right now, not the long term. So I think these still need more discussions, especially on the trade-offs. I know land tenure is a problem as well, but we just need to be innovative as we look into that. Professor Labode?
Yes, I get worried when we talk about long gestation period of particularly tree crops. And experience has also shown that, yes, they are not as long as we think. When you go into plantation development of such species as Tectona grandis, Melina arborea, which have a huge market, you can start harvesting 12, 15 years. And I don't think that is too long for serious investment. So I want to suggest that those of us in this business, this profession, should do something that will not demarket the interest, particularly of the young generation, about going into plantation establishment, commercial tree production. It doesn't take forever. I have personally experimented with this. I started a plantation when I was 51. And now I have a video. Each time I go to that farm, I am very happy. Within 12 years, I know that I can smile to the bank. So let's stop the marketing ourselves by, this emphasis on long gestation period. I don't think it is that bad. We should encourage the young generation to go into it. And of course, there should also be incentive from the policy dimension to be able to encourage them to go into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for really elaborating that, because even Kenya has also a fast growing hardwood species in the drylands that also matures within 15 years. So as you say, it's really how do we sell it to the youth so that they start investing them early, as we look into that. Good. Then there is a question regarding monitoring gaps. Among the global challenge has been lack of reference data to measure additionality, impacts of restoration efforts. This is by Nerea Lele, and this has been driven to low allocation of funds for monitoring and cost-benefit analysis. What's your thoughts in addressing this challenge in Africa? Monitoring gaps. Any of the panelists can look into this.
Yes, I can
Yes,
coach that.
Professor. Yes.
Yes, the Great Green Wall Initiative and the AFR 100 are actually correcting that. They are building in a monitoring mechanism, data gathering into this. Some of the new aspects of the projects are actually ensuring that data gathering becomes part and parcel of the entire process, and the monitoring and evaluation is also included. The hope is that this should be sustained. Yeah, it wasn't the case in the past, but the trend is changing for the better now. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Minang?
Yes. No, I really wanted to speak to Prof's appeal, because I think Prof's point is valid in the sense that Prof can afford to wait 12 years, but a young person that is wanting to invest can't wait 12 years, right? I think it is upon us to realize that even a 3-4 year period is extremely long for some people to just continue to invest without getting anything out. So being in the business, I think we need to be able to recognize that and find all kinds of ways of building incentives in those first 5 to 10 years so that people can see that at least the cash flows are not negative in those 5 years. That will then allow them to continue to get into the business. But if we can't do that, the average person would not be able to wait 12 years. That's the reality. And the banks can't wait 12 years for you to repay loans, right? So we need to find all kinds of mechanisms that can cover for all of those risks, all of those challenges in those early 5 to 10 years. That's the reality of our business. It's not about demarketing. It's about recognizing the reality and working at solving those problems.
Thank you, Peter, for that elaboration. I can see this topic of finance and inclusion is really a key thing. And I think what we will do is maybe try in the next webinar, I think we're organizing another one in January. We will try and plug in a bit more on some of these subjects that are still there, because I know we are running out of time. The only one question I would wanted to ask, and my colleague is not here, is of KEFRI's long-term experience with tree seed development. If there are any partnership initiatives available or planned to share in technology to other research institutions. Indeed, there are. We have programs where we have foresters coming and getting through, almost a 3-4 week program. We have also issues of people even asking for seeds to be imported. They're importing seeds and they are well packaged that specifically that they're asking for. So those initiatives are there. And I know my colleague would have spoken on this, but I know we are running out of time. What we would want to do is that maybe even as these questions are being done, that my people from the headquarters that we can be able to have them written down and we can direct them to the panelists and then see how we can even plug them in as a takeaway information pack, or even bring them back on the next webinar, even as we look forward to having the next webinar in January and next year. So allow me to close this session so that I can actually invite Dr. Webalam Tadase, who's the lead of the African Core Group, who has organized this SPIN Africa. And that will be followed by Veronica Steinhofer, also the lead project manager at IUFRO SPIN Initiative. Just an introduction of Dr. Webalam is that he's a research project coordinator for the C4ICRAF PATSPO project in Ethiopia. He has over 35 years of forestry research experience, and he holds a doctorate in tree improvement and forest genetics from the Polytechnic University of Madrid in Madrid. And previously, he has been a lead researcher and founding director general of the Ethiopian Environment and Forest Research Institute, IFRI. He's also served as the director of the forest research at the Ethiopian Institute of Agricultural Research. He's the IUFRO president nominee for Africa and the vice chair of the African Forest Forum Governing Council. So let me ask and welcome Dr. Tadase to give us just some takeaways, some perspectives, and the way forward for the SPIN Africa Network. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. All webinar participants, keynote speaker, and all the panelists. As the chair of SPIN Africa, I'm very happy for today's SPIN Africa launching program. The keynote speech and all panel discussion topics by our distinguished speakers is excellent, for me, commendable. They have addressed key issues of landscape restoration challenges and best experiences of the two sections, science and policy discourse for action. And I'm not going to in detail for each of the presentations, but as this is a launching program of SPIN Africa, as Nellie already have said earlier, we will continue preparing a series of webinars on the selected and priorities of African or continental issues. We have already prioritized action issues under the umbrella of theme landscape restoration in Africa. So we will proceed series of webinars. One next very important activities that we are going to implement is next year, Regional Africa SPIN event in Addis Ababa. The event will be organized with Ethiopian Forestry Development, EFD, as local host institution. With this, the time will be 6 to 9 October 2026. It will be hosted here at ILRI compound in Addis Ababa. The event will be organized in line with IUFRO's board meeting. So the event will be hybrid meeting in person and virtually. So we'll communicate further the event in the coming few months. Finally, I would like to thank all participants, the keynote speaker, the presenters, and also would like to thank the IUFRO for the headquarter team, especially Mirjana, for her outstanding leadership and communication of this webinar. But finally, special thanks for Professor Daniela for initiating, guiding, and closely supporting SPIN Africa initiative. Thank you, IUFRO. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tadase. Yes, you can give some claps. I would like now to invite Veronica.
Yes, thank you very much, Nellie, as our esteemed moderator. Today, you have done an excellent job walking us through the session, which I must say has been very rich, and I think all of us have a lot of takeaways here. In view of the advanced time, I would keep it short here, and I would invite you to scan the Q&R code, because here you have again the overview on the slide what Dr. Wubalem Tedesse has already highlighted in terms of next steps. We have seen today that there are many more issues for us to discuss and to dive further into, so we'll be hosting a webinar at the beginning of next year, and of course an in-person session in October in Ethiopia. And all our efforts are geared toward the IUFRO World Congress, which will take place in 2029 in Kenya. So with this, I would kindly invite you to stay engaged, to sign up, and to continue the discussion with us to see how we can further strengthen the linkages between science and policy. And with this, a big thank you again to everybody from my side as well. And back to you, Nellie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Webalam and Veronica, for those insightful closing remarks and also outlining the next steps for SPIN Africa. So on behalf of IUFRO, the SPIN Africa core group, the organizing team, really, I want to sincerely thank you for this inaugural launch. We are on and we're geared to move on. There are many things to discuss and really to just have this discourse of the work that we're doing and the policy and how we can really benefit the community. I think for me, it's all hands on deck. We can't work in isolation. We all need each other. And I think the issue of sharing information, let's get connected. If you're not a member of IUFRO, please join so that we can get the newsletter and the information, and as we move forward. Adios, au revoir. Thank you until the next time. God bless you all. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you to my panelists as well. Awesome.
Bye, Ernest.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Au revoir. Goodbye.
Au revoir.